Okay, welcome to P5J001. In this series of videos I'm going to show you how I'm going to code the von Neumann block diagram which describes the structure of a CPU using P5.js, and I'm actually going to make it a little bit more fun, adding a little twist which I'll explain in a moment. All the information about the project and all the resources and everything that leads up to this assignment can be found in this presentation, which I'll link to in the description below. But on slide 5 is my representation of what the block diagram looks like. So basically you, me, my students transform this block diagram into their own version of the block diagram using P5.js. So I've already done a little bit of research and have some ideas about how I'm going to transform it and make it a little more fun. I created a notes document which you can see here. So within the notes document I've copied and pasted a copy of the block diagram. Initially I thought that I'd like to do a VW camper van. I've always wanted one. So I thought, well, okay, let's see if there's anything else out there that might have a vehicle and a trailer kind of configuration. The actual vehicle itself, really the idea is that would be the CPU, and then the trailer, which is connected, would be the RAM. So after a little bit more research I found that there are these all-terrain vehicles that I think this one is maybe a Russian or a German vehicle. This one I think maybe a Canadian, Scandinavian. Anyway, I think I'm going to actually stick with this configuration for a couple of reasons. A, it looks cool, and B, I also managed to find these technical drawings which might actually prove helpful when I start putting together my actual design with the dimensions and things that I'm going to need in order to code the shapes to make it, which I'll explain later. So all I need to do now is figure out the size of the canvas that I'm actually going to create. So I'm going to go across to Google. I'm going to type in P5.js. Okay, P5.js. I'm going to click the link. Now this website here is where you'll find everything there is to know about P5.js, but basically it's a code library that's been put together to make JavaScript a little more fun and accessible for people starting to learn to program using JavaScript. So this is where you'd come if you wanted to find out something about P5.js, but what I want to do is actually go into the editor, which you can access via the link which I'm pointing at on the screen now. So this is the default page that displays, and you can just code and run, but actually if you want to save your project you need to log in. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to log in using Google, and I'm going to log in using my Videoreels login. So this is the interface. The font size and the theme can be edited by accessing the little cog in the top right hand corner. I'm not a fan of these different themes. I like to keep it simple. The font size is okay for me, so I'm just going to close that. So this is where we code. This is where we can actually get a preview of what the page is going to look like, or the canvas, and this is where the files are. Okay, so if I just run it, what it does is it creates a default canvas which is 400 pixels by 400 pixels and places it in the top left corner of the screen, as you can see. Now the actual von Neumann architecture diagram, I want to be able to fill the screen, right? So this is not an ideal size for me. I want to adjust the size. I also want to place it in the middle of the page. At the moment this is top left. Now I can adjust all of these things by editing the code inside these files. So this index.html file simply gives you the structure within which the canvas sits. At this point we don't need to touch this, so just ignore it. The sketch itself is the JavaScript file which it uses to grab the code to tell the browser what to display in terms of your diagram and its relationship to the canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some rough numbers in here. So this is the canvas width, which I think is roughly, I reckon, about 1200, and I'm going to go for 700. Now the background color 0 to 255, if you just put a number in that range inside these brackets here, it will give you a shade of grey. So 220 is obviously, you know, relatively light grey, but I want to almost make it white, so I'm going to change that to 250. Let's just hit play. There you go. Now you can't actually see it, but we're going to edit that and change that in a minute. So that's what we're going to do with the sketch. Just leave that there for a moment. We're going to go into style now. I'm going to start by setting the border color and thickness of the actual canvas itself. So I type border 1 pixel solid grey semicolon. I'm going to run it. So now we can actually see the size of the canvas. That looks much better. Now the only thing at the moment is it doesn't sit in the middle. So what I can actually do is add a little bit of code in here. Margin 40 pixels. Now that's going to 40 pixels. That's going to give a bit of space above and below the canvas. And then left and right is going to be auto, which is going to actually automatically adjust the width of the margin left and right so that it's constantly sitting in the middle. So if I just run that, so there we go. Now it's sitting in the middle. One last thing to do. Now padding and margin in this context simply tells the browser not to apply any additional margin or padding to anything on the page. Basically saying, look, I want to take care of that. Thanks very much. So that's why margin and padding is set to 0. All I want to do now is go to background, set the background color, to 250. Oh no, hang on. Getting myself in a kerfuddle. Background dash color. I often get my HTML versus CSS a bit mixed up. So background color, and I'm going to apply a hexadecimal color, EE semicolon. So the first 2 digits are the amount of red, amount of green, and the amount of blue. And if you have equal amounts of each of the red, green, and blue, you always end up with a grey. Okay, so there we go. So I've set the background color of the page, I've added a border to the canvas, and I've set the canvas size to 1200. Okay, now one other thing I would recommend that you do is if you come across or you learn a little bit of new code, it's always good to sort of reinforce that with some kind of comment, position, canvas, central, horizontal. Oh, my spelling is atrocious. Horizontally. Central horizontally. Okay. Now it won't make any difference to the code. It's just a little note. It tells me what that line of code does. Right, okay, so to actually get an impression of how that looks as a proper web page, we'll just save it. So I'm going to edit the name of the file. I'm going to call this Von Army Truck. Save. Now once it's saved, you can go in and actually select share. And if we click this full screen, it will actually open up. Now that looks really nice, but I think it could, if I'm honest, be a little wider. So I'm going to go back into my code. I'm going to go into Sketch, and I'm going to make my canvas a little wider, 1200 by 720, which I think proportionally is something similar to what a YouTube video would be. I'm now going to, so if I go File, Save, and refresh, and then go back into this page and hit Refresh There it is, it's a little bit wider. So that is the end of the first video. In the second video, we'll talk about how we can take the dimensions from this file in terms of the size of the canvas and use that to actually create a detailed technical diagram using a program called CorelDRAW, where we can actually get the numbers that we need in order to create our diagram using the code. Okay, thanks for watching. See you in part 2.